Hello everyone. I'm the narrator. Today, I bring you a millionaire love story. A love that rises above all challenges. Where hearts find each other in a world of luxury. True wealth isn't just money. It's love that lasts. Do you believe in destined love? If so, like, share, comment, and subscribe to Millionaire Love Stories for more heart-touching stories. Now, let's step into this story together. Caleb Whitmore was a man who built his life on numbers, strategy, and control. A self-made millionaire in the finance industry. He prided himself on never letting emotions interfere with his decisions. Love, fate, those were mere illusions, distractions for people who couldn't navigate life on their own. Yet here he was, gripping the steering wheel of his car, staring at the warmly lit restaurant in front of him, and wondering how on earth he had let his best friend, Lucas, talk him into this. Lucas, this is ridiculous, Caleb muttered, his jaw tightening. Lucas leaned against the passenger door, arms crossed, smirking. Caleb, you're 34, ridiculously wealthy, and yet, the only relationship you've committed to in the last 5 years is with your work. It's time to change that. Caleb sighed, rubbing his temple. Fine, but this is the last time. Lucas grinned. That's what you said the last 3 times. With a resigned breath, Caleb pushed open the car door and stepped out. As he entered the restaurant, he told himself to keep it simple, smile, be polite, and leave early. But the moment his gaze landed on the woman sitting at the corner table, all those thoughts vanished. Because, somehow, he knew her, and that terrified him more than anything. Caleb inhaled sharply, then reached into his pocket. He withdrew a small velvet box, the sight of it making Lillian's breath hitch. He opened it, revealing a simple yet elegant ring. A symbol of everything he had come to understand about love, not grandiose, but enduring. I don't want to stand outside your life anymore, he said, his voice steady, filled with emotion. I want to be in it. Every high, every low, every storm, every sunrise. I don't just want to love you, Lillian, I want to share my life with you. Will you marry me? Lillian's lips parted, but no words came. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached up to cup his face. Her touch feather light, as if grounding herself in reality. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling over as she exhaled a shaky breath. Yes, she whispered, her voice breaking. Yes, Caleb, I will. A smile broke across Caleb's face, pure relief and joy intertwining. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and as he did, she let out a soft, breathless laugh, overwhelmed by the moment. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Caleb pulled her into his arms, holding her as if he never planned to let go. Because, for the first time in his life, he knew he never would. As Caleb stepped into the dimly lit restaurant, the soft hum of conversations and clinking glasses barely registered in his mind. His focus was singular, sharp. He was here to get this over with. Another blind date, another awkward hour of forced conversation. But then, he saw her, sitting at the corner table, with the warm glow of the candlelight reflecting in her deep, thoughtful eyes, was Lillian Brooks, and in that instant, Caleb's world shifted, his steps faltered, breath hitching in his throat as recognition slammed into him like a wave. 3 years ago, the sterile white walls of a hospital room, the persistent beeping of medical monitors, pain, so much pain that he had barely been able to move. And in the midst of it all, a gentle voice, a steady hand adjusting his blanket, whispering words of quiet strength. You're stronger than this. You will get through it. Caleb hadn't seen her face properly back then, lost in the haze of medication and exhaustion. But he remembered the warmth in that voice, the presence that had pulled him through the darkest moments of his life. And now, here she was, sitting across from him, oblivious to the storm raging inside him. Lillian glanced up, meeting his gaze. For a split second, something flickered in her eyes, recognition, hesitation, but just as quickly, she masked it with a polite smile. Caleb, she greeted, extending her hand. He shook it, holding on just a little longer than necessary. Lillian, nice to meet you. But it wasn't the first time. It never had been. Caleb sat down, his mind racing. How could this be possible? Of all the people in the world, of all the blind dates. Why her? He studied her face, noticing the subtle way her fingers tapped against her glass, the way her gaze flickered downward for just a second too long. She recognized him, he was sure of it. But why was she pretending otherwise? So, Lillian, he started, clearing his throat. Tell me about yourself. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Not much to tell. I work at St. Mary's Hospital. Been a nurse for a while now. It's rewarding but exhausting. St. Mary's, Caleb repeated slowly. That's where I was after my accident. 3 years ago. Lillian's hand tensed slightly around her glass. But her smile never wavered. Oh, small world. Yeah, small world. Caleb leaned forward. You wouldn't have been working there back then, would you? She exhaled, a soft breath that carried the weight of something unspoken. I might have been, but I don't remember every patient I see. Caleb, it's part of the job. He knew she was lying. Not because she was a bad liar, but because he had spent too many nights staring at the small handwritten note left on his bedside table all those years ago. A note that read, "Stay strong, Caleb. The road ahead is tough. But so are you." He still had that note tucked away in a drawer. And he was certain Lillian was the one who wrote it. The night air outside the restaurant was crisp. But the tension between Caleb and Lillian was sharper. They walked in silence down the quiet street, neither willing to address the storm brewing beneath the surface. So, you're really going to pretend? Caleb finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. Lillian kept her gaze forward, her fingers tightening around the strap of her purse. Pretend what? She asked, feigning ignorance. Caleb let out a humorless chuckle, stopping in his tracks. That you don't remember me? That you weren't the one who sat by my bedside when I couldn't even move? That you didn't leave me that note telling me to stay strong? Lillian inhaled sharply, but she didn't turn around. Instead, she kept walking. I don't know what you're talking about. Caleb moved in front of her, blocking her path. Lillian, look at me and tell me you don't remember. For a long moment, she said nothing. The street lights above cast a golden glow over them, flickering against the unspoken emotion swimming in her eyes. But then, she let out a slow breath, shaking her head. It doesn't matter, Caleb. That was years ago. It matters to me, he countered, because that moment, it wasn't just something that happened and disappeared. You saved me, Lillian, and now, I want to understand why you're pretending it never happened. Her lips parted slightly as if she wanted to say something, but then she pressed them together. Because I don't want to be a reminder of your worst days. She finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Caleb stared at her, stunned. What? Lillian clenched her fists, looking away. I saw how broken you were. Caleb, I saw the pain, the anger, the frustration. And now, you've built a life for yourself. You've moved on. I don't want to be the person who drags you back into that darkness. Caleb exhaled, his shoulders relaxing slightly. You think that's what you are to me? A reminder of something painful? She nodded, her throat tightening. Aren't I? Caleb took a step closer, his eyes locking onto hers. Lillian, you weren't just someone who saw me at my lowest. You were the person who gave me a reason to fight. Every time I thought about giving up, I thought about that note you left. I thought about your voice telling me I was strong enough. You weren't my darkness, Lillian. You were my light. Her breath hitched. Caleb, tell me the truth, he urged. If it were just about me, you could have ignored me tonight. But I saw it in your eyes, too. You remember everything, and it scared you. Why? Lillian's fingers trembled. Because if I admit it, it means I mattered to you more than I should have. And I was never supposed to. Caleb felt his chest tighten. He took another step closer. And what if I wanted you to? Lillian swallowed hard, her emotions threatening to spill over. But before she could answer, the sound of a car horn shattered the moment. She flinched, breaking eye contact. I should go. Lillian, good night. Caleb. She turned and walked away before he could stop her. Caleb stood there, watching her retreating figure, his heart pounding. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The piercing sound of a phone ringing in the dead of night jolted Caleb from his restless sleep. Groggy, he reached for his phone, squinting at the unknown number flashing across the screen. Something in his gut twisted, a premonition, an unease that sent a chill down his spine. He hesitated for a split second before answering. Caleb. The voice on the other end was barely more than a whisper. Trembling, fragile, but he knew that voice anywhere. Lillian? What's wrong? He shot upright, sleep vanishing instantly as dread crept into his chest. It's Noah. Her breath hitched, and he could hear the barely restrained sob in her voice. He's struggling to breathe. I'm taking him to the hospital now. Caleb. She didn't need to finish. He was already on his feet, grabbing his jacket, keys clattering in his haste. I'm coming. You don't have to. I'm coming. Lillian, he repeated, voice firm, leaving no room for argument. The emergency room was a blur of white walls, fluorescent lights, and the sterile scent of antiseptic. Caleb rushed through the entrance, eyes scanning desperately until he spotted her. Lillian was sitting on the plastic waiting room chair, her hands clenched tightly together, her posture rigid, as though willing herself to keep from falling apart. The moment she looked up and saw him, something in her cracked. Caleb? He closed the distance between them in 3 long strides. Without thinking, without hesitation, he wrapped his arms around her. She didn't resist. Her body trembled against his. And he felt the weight of her fear, her exhaustion, her helplessness. He's inside, she whispered against his chest. They said he had a severe asthma attack. He stopped breathing for a moment. They had to intubate him. Her voice broke on the last sentence. And Caleb clenched his jaw, anger and helplessness boiling beneath his skin. He's a fighter. Lillian, he's going to be okay, he murmured, tightening his hold, wishing he could take the pain from her, wishing he could bear it for her. Minutes stretched into hours. Every passing second felt like an eternity as they sat side by side, waiting for updates. Caleb hadn't let go of her hand since the moment he arrived. Why are you here? She finally asked, her voice small, hesitant. You didn't have to come. He turned to her, his grip on her fingers tightening. Yes, I did. You don't have to go through this alone. Lillian, I'm here. A tear slipped down her cheek. And for the first time that night, she didn't wipe it away. I don't know how to let someone be here for me. I've always handled everything on my own. You don't have to anymore. Caleb whispered, not when it comes to me. Before she could respond, the doctor walked in. Lillian shot up, her entire body tensing. How is he? Is he okay? The doctor smiled reassuringly. He's stable. We'll keep him under observation. But he's breathing on his own now. He's asking for you. Lillian exhaled shakily, relief crashing over her like a tidal wave. She turned to Caleb, eyes shining with gratitude and something else, something deeper. Unspoken. Thank you, she whispered. He gave her a soft smile. Go see him. I'll be right here. And for the first time, Lillian believed him. The sun hung low on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson. The lake stretched out before them, its surface reflecting the warm colors of the setting sun, casting a serene glow over the quiet afternoon. Caleb and Lillian sat on a weathered wooden pier, their feet dangling just above the water, the soft sound of rippling waves filling the silence between them. For months, they had shared moments both profound and simple, laughter over morning coffee, silent understanding during difficult days, stolen glances that spoke volumes more than words ever could. The barriers between them had crumbled, replaced by something neither of them dared to name, but both had felt growing stronger with each passing day. Caleb turned to Lillian, watching the way the breeze played with her hair, how the fading sunlight kissed her skin. His heart pounded, the weight of the moment settling deep into his bones. He had never been a man who let emotions guide him, yet here he was, about to take the biggest leap of faith in his life. Lillian, he murmured, his voice uncharacteristically soft. She turned to him, her deep, thoughtful eyes searching his face. What is it? Caleb inhaled sharply, then reached into his pocket. He withdrew a small velvet box, the sight of it making Lillian's breath hitch. He opened it, revealing a simple yet elegant ring, a symbol of everything he had come to understand about love, not grandiose, but enduring. I don't want to stand outside your life anymore, he said, his voice steady, filled with emotion. I want to be in it. Every high, every low, every storm, every sunrise. I don't just want to love you, Lillian, I want to share my life with you. Will you marry me? Lillian's lips parted, but no words came. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached up to cup his face. Her touch feather light, as if grounding herself in reality. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling over as she exhaled a shaky breath. Yes, she whispered, her voice breaking. Yes, Caleb, I will. A smile broke across Caleb's face, pure relief and joy intertwining. He slipped the ring onto her finger. And as he did, she let out a soft, breathless laugh, overwhelmed by the moment. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Caleb pulled her into his arms, holding her as if he never planned to let go. Because, for the first time in his life, He knew he never would. The morning sunlight filtered through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow over the quiet home. Lillian stood by the counter, pouring coffee into 2 mugs while Caleb flipped through a newspaper at the table. The air was filled with the soft hum of domesticity, a peace that felt almost surreal after everything they had been through. From the living room, a burst of laughter rang out. Noah, now healthier and stronger than ever, was sprawled on the floor with their golden retriever, Milo, playfully wrestling over a stuffed toy. Caleb glanced up, watching the scene unfold with a soft smile. A year ago, his life had been structured, predictable, solitary. Now, it was chaotic in the best way possible. There was life, laughter, love, things he never realized he had been missing until Lillian and Noah came into his world. Lillian walked over, placing a steaming cup of coffee in front of him before sitting down. Their hands found each other instinctively, fingers intertwining as they exchanged a knowing look. "This is what happiness looks like," she murmured, her voice filled with quiet wonder. Caleb squeezed her hand, nodding. "Yeah, and I wouldn't change a thing." As the morning melted into the day, the 3 of them set out on their weekly picnic by the lake. They spread a blanket on the soft grass, sharing sandwiches, stories, and laughter under the open sky. Noah excitedly showed Caleb a new trick he had taught Milo, and Lillian watched them with eyes full of love. At one point, Noah looked up at them, his voice carrying a sincerity beyond his years. "You guys are the best thing that ever happened to me." Lillian blinked back tears, reaching over to ruffle his hair. "And you, Noah, are the heart of this family." Caleb nodded, his gaze filled with warmth. "Family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who choose to stand by each other, no matter what." And in that moment, under the golden light of the setting sun, they all knew, the past no longer held them back. The future stretched ahead, filled with endless possibilities. They were no longer just individuals navigating life alone. They were a family, bound by love, resilience, and an unbreakable bond. Because at the end of the day, love is not just about finding someone. It's about building something together, something real, something lasting, something worth every challenge. And Caleb, Lillian, and Noah had found exactly that. If this story has touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Millionaire Love Stories. Have love and resilience ever changed your life? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. Subscribe for more stories of love, transformation, and the power of connection. Together, let's believe in the magic of love.